Number 1. Want a ride? I don't have a car. And that really doesn't bother me. I've found that when I have a car, I tend to be a lot lazier. And when I walk somewhere, I know that I have no choice but to do what I do and then walk home. You make the most of the time you're using if you're using most of the energy. I work a late second shift at a fast food restaurant. It's about 4 miles from my house. And yeah, I know that is quite a long way away. But after doing it for a while, I really got used to it. I'll walk to work, clean up, and then walk home after work. If anything, it kept me from gaining too much weight from all the McRibs I ate in the wintertime. Every now and then, a good person will see me walking, pull over, and offer me a ride. I rarely accepted it, though. I would tell the driver I was doing it for the exercise, and I would keep walking. But once in a while, I would accept the ride if I felt that I really needed it. The night that this happened, I had worked a really busy day at work. I was exhausted, and I was dreading the walk home. I'd never asked anyone at the restaurant for a ride before, so I didn't feel comfortable doing that. Instead, at 3 a.m., I set off for the long walk back to my little apartment. To set the scene, there was no moon in the sky this night. Plus, it was warm and very windy. If I had to guess, it was a good 21-mile-per-hour wind. That always blew when it happened when I was walking against the wind, pun intended. The roads were quiet. Once I got past the sidewalk area, it was a bit rougher walking. In that stretch of road, it was mostly just wooded area. However, when I was coming up close to a road that I turned on, there were a couple parking lots for a factory, a DMV, and a gas station. They were all on the right side of the road. I was walking on that side of the road too. As I was walking, I heard a vehicle approaching behind me. I turned and saw a really old, beat-up and little pickup truck rattling along the road. The speed limit there was 45 miles an hour, but he was lucky to have been going 25. He passed me up. I was half expecting him to pull over and offer me a ride. I did get a whiff of a nasty smell as the truck drove by, and was immediately happy he didn't stop. What was strange, though, was that the truck then turned into the first parking lot in front of me. He turned around in the parking lot. Of course, I thought maybe he was turning around and coming back to pick me up. But he pulled out of the parking lot and continued going the way he was going before he pulled into the parking lot. Now, I thought this was weird. However, I also figured he probably just made a mistake, pulling into the wrong place. Then, strangely enough, he pulled into the immediate next parking lot. He then proceeded to do the exact same thing as before. He pulled in, turned around in the lot, and then continued to drive in the same direction. He did this at least 4 times. After the 4th time, he pulled and sat by the side of the road. I was pretty apprehensive at this point. The way the driver was acting was really weird. And he parked along the side of the road, right before the road I had to turn on. So, I would have to walk by this truck if he didn't drive away at first. I just hoped that he would. I kept getting closer and closer to the truck, and he just sat there. I walked through the parking lots on the grass, trying to keep as far away from the side of the road as possible. When I passed the truck, I was probably a good 10 feet to the right of it. I kept wanting to turn and look at the truck, but I didn't. Instead, I just walked over to the road that I was supposed to turn on, and then I turned. When I turned, the truck pulled off the side of the road and then turned on the road that I turned on. This was really weird to me, and I was beginning to get really nervous. But that nervousness was not nearly as bad as I felt when the truck drove up in front of me and pulled over onto the side of the road. This time, when I passed it on the right, the driver yelled at me and asked me if I needed a ride. There was no way I was going to accept it. I just turned to the car, told the guy no thank you, and tried to get on my way. When I had walked for a little while, the guy pulled off the side of the road and pulled in front of me again. This forced me to walk past him again, and when I did, he asked me if I was sure that I didn't want to ride. He told me it was no problem. I confirmed that I didn't. Once I walked a while in front of him again, while he sat there, he did this again. This time, he pulled in a way that blocked me from walking on the side of the road. He offered me a ride yet again, telling me it was windy out, and I'd get home much faster. This time, he turned the light on inside of his little pickup. If I was nervous before, I was nervous more now. He wasn't very old, but he was very filthy, and so was the inside of his truck. He had some sort of animal skins hanging from his rearview mirror. One of his eyes was obviously a glass eye. The front of the pickup was filled with trash, and I noticed that he had a big, red-stained knife sitting on his dashboard. A quick look in the back of the truck revealed a lot of trash, and what I expected were several pieces of roadkill. I declined the ride again. I looked to the right, and there was an entry to an apartment complex. I told him this was my place, so there was no need. So I began walking forward again. When I got to the driveway of the apartment building, he once again pulled out and drove slowly up to the building behind me. It was like he was trying to see if I really lived there. I didn't, but fortunately, the lobby door wasn't locked. So I walked into the lobby. I walked down one of the hallways around the corner. I stood on the side of the corner and could see the lights of his headlights shining on the wall. I waited for them to go away. 45 minutes passed, and the man did not drive away. Finally, I saw the headlights move away and heard the truck drive away. There was a payphone in the lobby. I didn't want to walk at that point, so I called a taxi and took it home. I also went out and bought myself a bicycle the following day. I didn't ever see that truck again, and I was grateful. The experience was so terrifying, not knowing why this man was trying so hard to give me a ride. Number 2. Insomnia. I have always had problems sleeping. It was probably worse when I was a teenager than it is now. I was a teenager back when this happened. My parents didn't really have a lot of money, so summers were pretty miserable. We couldn't afford an air conditioner. I can't tell you how many days I would be lying in bed, hot, sweaty, awful, and unable to sleep. A lot of times, in order to wear myself out, and really to enjoy a few cool breezes, I would get up in the middle of the night and take a walk. Everyone in my house was already asleep, and I was able to get out quietly. I would then just walk. I would not always know where I was walking. It was aimless, really. The town I lived in was pretty small, and it definitely had no nightlife. So when I walked around the neighborhoods and the streets of the town, I was usually by myself. Only an occasional car would drive by. The night this happened, it was particularly hot outside. I was laying in bed, sweating even with a box fan pointed right at me. I probably tossed and turned for 2 hours, completely unable to sleep. Turning and looking at the clock, I saw it was 1 a.m. I groaned, turned over, and got out of bed. I knew this was going to be a rough night, so I decided to head outside. It was refreshing outside that night, actually. There was a really nice and cool and consistent breeze. It didn't keep me from sweating, however. Hell, I sweat so bad that I could look at a picture of a desert and begin to sweat. But it was still better than being in the house. As usual, there really wasn't anyone around. The occasional car would drive by me, but that was it. I was walking on the right sidewalk. As I was, I strangely saw a person coming up towards me in the distance. I was a little surprised too, but at first I didn't think too much about it. I couldn't always be out here and expect to be the only person. Plus, the person was on the other side of the street. I tried not to pay attention to the person, but as he got closer, I noticed something. He was wearing a mask. It was one of those clear-faced masks. My heart did beat a little faster, but I wasn't immediately very alarmed. However, as I got closer to him, he stopped walking, and he was looking at me. This made me feel very uncomfortable as I began walking in the direction toward him. His face followed me as I walked in the direction towards him, and then past him. His face followed me the entire time. I thought maybe it was just some guy trying to be scary. You know, people are like that. So I just hoped that he would be on his way. However, when I passed, I took a glance around, looked back, and saw that although he stayed on his side of the street, he had turned around and began walking in the same direction as me. And he was still looking at me. My heart began beating harder. I was a bit worried. I wasn't scared yet, really, but the situation was unpleasant. I still thought it was someone just trying to scare me, so I did my best to keep calm. The next time I came to a street, I decided to turn on it. And when I did, the guy crossed the road, so he was following behind me. So now I was scared. I was pretty unsure of what to do. The guy was clearly following me, although he really wasn't going too fast. I still thought maybe he was just trying to scare me. So although I began walking faster, I wasn't quite terrified. There was a small 24-hour gym in my area. Because I lived in such a small town, there weren't workers there at night. To get in, you had to use a card scanner. My family did have a family membership, and I brought my wallet with me. I decided I was going to try and walk to the gym, which wasn't very far away, and get inside. The guy kept following me, and he picked up the pace, but he wasn't running. I matched him and walked faster. But when I turned on the short road that the gym was on, I broke down and started hauling ass. While I was running, I reached into my pocket and grabbed my wallet, so I had my keycard out. I got to the parking lot, not daring to look behind myself. When I got to the door, I scanned the card, got in, and quickly pulled the door closed behind me. I saw the guy. He had followed me. He was standing about 15 feet away from the door of the gym. He stood there, looking at me for a few moments. He took 2 steps closer, reached under his shirt, and pulled something out. It was a large kitchen knife. He waved it at me as if to indicate that if he had caught me, he was going to use it. He then ran off into the night. I called the police and explained what happened. They came to the gym and gave me a ride home. We couldn't identify the guy because of the mask. I have no idea if he ever hurt anyone else or not. I hope he didn't. Number 3. Hitching. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. This is yet another hitchhiking story. People who haven't learned by now that hitchhiking can lead to bad situations probably deserve what they get, right? However, when you're in a situation in which you really need a ride, it's easier than you think to change your mind and take the ride. And that's what happened to me. Just detailing why exactly I was hitchhiking. I had been riding across the country on a Greyhound bus. That is torture enough. What was worse was that the damn bus driver didn't stop at the stop on my ticket. He just passed it by. When he came to the next stop 30 miles away, he announced it and I nearly messed my pants. I then approached him about it and he told me he didn't have any stops there, so he passed it by. I argued and argued with him, but there was really nothing that could be done. These were small gas station stops, and there was no one there I could talk to. There were no buses coming back the other way for at least 24 hours, and I was majorly screwed over. My only option was to hoof it and try to hitch a ride. I had hitched before and never had a bad experience, so I was feeling alright about doing it. But it took a long time, and a lot of walking, before finally a car pulled over. I got into it, and thanked the guy in the car. He seemed normal at first, and we had an interesting conversation. I was happy and thankful that he wasn't some sort of freak. He probably took me a good 20 miles before things got weird. He asked me if I lived in the town he was taking me to. I told him no, I didn't, but I was on the way to stay with a friend for a few months. The guy was quiet for a moment before asking me if I wanted to come to his place and stay there instead. The question caught me off guard, and I told him no, I was happy where I was going. I couldn't believe that someone I knew for 20 minutes would ask me that. The man didn't give up, though. He began telling me how much better I would like it at his place. He told me he had a big basement in his home. It had a steep staircase. He told me I would have a really nice time staying in his basement. He emphasized the word staying, and that sent a chill down my spine. I let him know that I appreciated the offer, although I actually didn't. I was looking forward to going and seeing my friend, but that was okay. The man countered, telling me that I could stay with him for a week before going and seeing my friend. He told me again that I would have a good time staying in his basement. He kept talking about the basement, and that was weird and seriously creeping me out. This went back and forth a few times, and the asking never stopped. After a fifth or sixth refusal on my part, he then began telling me about his basement. He began telling me he had all sorts of restraints in there. He told me he had a sling, he had a medical chair with stirrups that he could strap me into. He said he even had a bondage rack. It was then that I just had enough. Now please don't misunderstand me here. I'm actually gay myself, and I guess it may have been somewhat obvious to the guy after he picked me up. I'm one of those guys you can pick out in a crowd. But even if I was into that sort of thing, I wasn't going to go there with someone who I met 20 minutes before. I insisted then, and several times, that the guy let me out of the car. Several times he refused, still trying to convince me. After several requests, he hit the gas hard, and the car lurched forward. He went fast and fast until I knew for sure that he was going over 100 miles an hour. And he was angry. His face was red, but he said nothing. Then he began pushing on the brake, slowing down before hitting the brake hard. Thank God I always wear a seatbelt, or I may have been killed. Then the man turned to me. His face was red, and he had slobber around the corner of his mouth. He began screaming at me to get the hell out of his car. He told me to hurry up and get out of his car before he killed me. I reached into his back seat to grab my bag, and as I did, he pushed me a bit. Fortunately, I was able to get my bag and get out of the car. Right when I stepped out, and before I could close the door, the man took off driving fast with the door open. In no time, he was gone. I walked the rest of the way to my friend's house. He told me I should have known better than to hitchhike. He asked me why the hell I didn't call him and ask for a ride. I didn't have a cell phone, and there aren't any payphones around anymore. He shook his head and told me that the gas station attendant probably would have let me call, and I realized he was right. And by hindsight, well, you know. Anyway, love you, cat, and don't hitchhike. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and please take the hitchhiking advice. I want to let you know that I will be doing another stream this coming weekend. It will be on Saturday, but I haven't decided on a time yet. Please watch my Twitter if you want to know when. Also, I'm still including the link for the GoFundMe I set up for my friend who has terminal cancer, and one of the things he wanted was to go to Waverly Hills on a ghost hunt trip. I am not asking anyone for money, just for a few seconds of your time to tweet the link or forward it on some other social media. Circulation really helps. If you'd like to read print versions of these stories, please check them out on the Killer Orange Cat subreddit in the link provided. In the meantime, if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the subscribe button below, or using the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear at the end of this closing. Feel free to leave me a comment to let me know what you think of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter using the links in the description. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address provided in the description. My main requirement is that the story is original, meaning it has not yet been read on any other YouTube channel. I hope you'll make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.